Namaste. Uh, so Today is January 30th, 2019, and I wanted to discuss this particular topic. Is judiciary virulently Hinduphobic, right? So what prompted me was that I recently, came upon news which where I saw the Supreme Court referring a PL against Sanskrit Prayers in Kendriya Vidyalayas to a five-judge bench, right? Now, this was not surprising, and this is kind of the news that Hindus are used to, bad news, that we hear on a regular basis. And I just thought, enough is enough, and I have to speak out against these kind of policies, which are pursued by our political, judicial, bureaucratic complex, basically, right? So let us, before I actually get to the issue, I would like to, take you through the history of discrimination that that we Hindus have faced, and there's a lot of history. I understand that, there is pre-independence, there is medieval, and older times basically, and then there is the post-independence. I just wanted to highlight some of the reasons, that had a lot of impact on our lives, in this country. So I just wanted to present you that first, and then I can go to the issues. Okay. So first up is, yes, 1947. There was large-scale violence against Hindus, because a large section of Muslims did not want to live with Hindus, and they wanted to separate. They wanted a separate. They wanted a separate country, and they eventually got it. And but Hindus suffered the worst, because there were large-scale murders and rapes against Hindu women. And that all that happened. After it happened and we got our independence, we thought that, look, we went through hell, and probably this is our this is our we'll be happy from now onwards. That is what we thought, but that did not happen. We also thought that the Muslims got their country, a Muslim country, and the Hindus would get a Hindu country, and it was also not stated that the country belonged to anybody else. So we thought that it was our country, right? But this was not to be. Okay, while the government continued to be colonial in nature, and they really made some moves, to completely disenfranchise the Hindus, right? So most importantly, one of the defining moments in post-independence history is Indira Gandhi enacting the emergency, and also she changed the preamble of the Indian Constitution, and India was made a socialist and a secular country, right? So that that may sound very nice, the word secular, but in reality, I don't want to go into the history of what secularism is, and there's a lot of literature out there, a lot of discussions on the internet, which you can go into the European genesis of this particular word. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about what it implied. Okay, so secularism implied that the government, which was protecting its own people, suddenly took off the protection, and it went to the foreign religions, and Christianity and Islam, and they said, now you can convert them. So basically, we lost our protection, when India became a secular country, right? And if you can see, after this, India became a secular country, and these foreign religions had a free hand. Earlier also they had a free hand, but this was like free hand on steroids kind of thing. So they went and did a lot of conversions. So if now at this today, if you see the state of a country, it has kind of augmented the breaking India forces, and we are at a point where our entire civilization, the existence of our civilization, the history of our people, is that is it really are we going to survive? This kind of questions have to be asked right now, right? If you take the example of Northeast, and many states in India, Nagaland, Mizoram, now Arunachal Pradesh nowadays, they all are Christian states, and they're also there's a lot of hatred towards certain native cultures, which were thriving way back in those states, also in the mainland India, basically. So they are virulently, you can say, anti-native, in nature, basically, those states. And similarly, post-independence and very recently, and we have seen conversions happening in large scale in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. Kerala also has a history of these conversions happening, and so on and so forth. But and the UPA government, which was which from 2004 to 2014, which was at the helm, which was run by a Christian lady, and I think that also helped augment convergence in a really really big way. Okay, so while we would certainly go on to make a different video to address these issues, but let's carry on further, right? So. So the Indian government did not just change the preamble as a token of a token of respect or a token of respect to the international community as such, but it went on to kind of officially discriminate against the Hindus, right? So some of the things that you might have observed in your regular life, that there are some dedicated schemes to Muslims and Christians, for example, study loans, employment loans, health subsidies, madrasas. Government really funds a lot of money. Each state government funds a lot of madrasas, and church construction, funds for church construction and renovation, marriage grants. We had the famous Shadi Bhagya in Karnataka, which was a scheme for Muslim girls. The state would grant 50,000 rupees if they got married. So this is what so Hindu taxpayer money was kind of used to for the benefit of these religions. So is India really secular? No, it is not, because a secular country means that the state, the government, does not favor any religions, and so it keeps its hands off religions, and religion keeps its hands off from governance. So that is what a secular state means. So here we have a government which is taxing the taxpayer. Large section of the population is Hindu, and so you have Hindu tax money going towards enlarging the minorities. So they call themselves the minority, the judicial, bureaucratic, and political complex of India have come up with a nice, term, deceitful term called minority. Well, Christianity is the largest religion in the world. It has around 2.2 plus billion people following it, and Islam has around 1.6 plus billion people following it. These are the number one and number two religions in the world, but our system calls them minorities. Our system calls them minorities, and they use Hindu, by and large, Hindu taxpayer money. I will say, I'm not saying they don't pay taxes, but if we are the majority, then the majority of the taxes do come from us. So they pay taxpayer money for the benefit of these foreign religions. And so, what is essentially the state telling to its own people? It is telling to the people that our preferred religions are Christianity and Islam, and we give a lot of privileges to these people, and if you want, you can convert. So that is the message that a so-called secular state is sending out to its own people, right? So this is a kind of akin to apartheid state. Basically, apartheid state, South Africa comes to mind. Now apartheid is a state where a certain privileged minority, a minority is privileged above the majority. So basically in South Africa you had a situation where such whites received a lot of privileges as to compared to blacks were discriminated against. So we have a state which is an apartheid state. It's an anti-Hindu system, basically, right? So this is what happens in India, right? And coming back to education, right? So education, the most important thing, which is supposed to kind of uplift the nation and build the nation. So education goes towards that, right? But if you see, our cultural heritage has been ignored. We learn a lot more about our invaders, like we are, Mughals are glorified, Muhammad Ghori, Ghazni, all these people are glorified, but our own people who offered a resistance, they are completely ignored, right? For example, they don't cover up with the glorious Maratha Empire, which kind of control the vast land of India, till the from Delhi to to South India, basically, and the kind of enterprise that and bravery that Shivaji showed is never taught to our children, right? Similarly, the resistance that Maharana Pratap offered, that is also not taught to our children, and there is also a lot of inferiority complex, because there is also a very biased syllabus which kind of tells that Hindus are bad and so on and so forth. So a lot of this is we lose out a lot on education. Or children, they don't even know who they are. I mean, what is the civilization that they have inherited, right? So it is most you'll not be surprised if you will learn more about the Greek civilization or some Mesopotamian civilization in the Indian syllabus rather than the Hindu civilization itself, right? And then there are these boards, education boards, and you have ICSE and CBSE, and then there are various state education boards. But these are all because it's secular in nature, and they don't admit any syllabus which is based on the truth or facts of this country. So we don't have a system which is like we had the Gurukul system. prior to independence, and so if we had got independence, and then the government should have kind of tried to restore that system, right? Not only did it not try to restore the education system that we had, but it also kind of broke the support structures for gurukuls, right? So it took away the temples. The temples were taken over by government, and the money that used to come to temple used to go into supporting education and and whatnot for the Hindu community. But that was taken away from the Hindus, and basically, being a poor nation at that point of time, we could not afford to build have sustain the systems, and the systems naturally went away, and then we had to study in anglicized or Christianized kind of an education model. So this is what happened, throughout the course of history. Let us see why am I saying this? Why these kind of things are happening basically. And we are talking about the judiciary, and why am I saying that the judiciary is, or why should we contemplate that the judiciary is anti-Hindu nature, right? I mean, one of the reasons why I say it is this because uh, I mean, look at the honesty of these people who were in courts, and they decided to call a majority of the world as a minority, and that tells a lot about its about the honesty of these people. And then we have a lot of activism, misplaced activism, or malintentioned activism. Basically, like you can see it in the Ram Janmabhoomi issue, right, where we know there is archaeological and literary evidence that the temple exists under the disputed Babri structure. And there are a lot of temples across India where temples were kind of brought down by invaders, and then uh, mosques or dargahs were constructed on top of that. So the judiciary does not have the honesty to address that issue, and because it has a lot of consequences, right? Justice delayed is justice denied, and this is a simple rule which the judiciary itself does not follow. Basically, it does not follow. I mean, even for example, they had kind of banned the azan, from being kind of proclaimed on loudspeakers, but they they never took care of the implementation, for example, right? And even in the Shabrimala case, they did not make efforts to understand the nuances of Hinduism, the nuances of deity worship, the nuances of local legends, basically. So they did not understand that, right? And they kind of presented the strawman arguments. They kind of presented strawman arguments by themselves, and then they declared against the tradition. Even though the lady judge on that case, was pro tradition, these people went ahead and did that, right? So, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Is there some kind of a huge conspiracy that is working against the Hindus? Yes, I mean you could say so, because it is not it's a conspiracy, but it's a coincidental conspiracy is what I would say, right? So, who are these people who are ruling us? It could be the judiciary, it could be the political leaders, it could be the media, and who are these people who are ruling us, and but who are so virulently anti-Hindu? So these are products of a system that is not programmed to be native, right? And like I told, we don't have a system that is a native education system. So people are, audience can, go to this book called as The Beautiful Tree, written by Dharmapal. So it gives you a picture of how the education was there, before independence or at the time of independence, basically, right? And we have a lot of these vicious social science studies that which kind of pits one community against the other, upper caste against lower caste, one religion against the other, and most often than not, it is anti-Hindu in nature, basically, right? And even something like an IIT, right? I mean, even IITs now have social science departments. I do not know why engineers have to read social science. I mean, people who want to become programmers, or open, IT companies, why should they read social sciences, right? And I think the reason here is very simple. They would like to harvest certain talent, to work for their agenda. I mean, I'm talking about the leftist people of the leftist persuasion, right? And so, if an engineer, if a successful entrepreneur becomes virulently anti-Hindu, so he might fund such initiatives as well from his money. This is the only reason that I can think of, right? And I mean, there are a lot of education that happens in the college campus across India is kind of controlled by left ideologies, and these are usually of anti-Hindu persuasion, right? And overall, like I said, a system which is apartheid in nature, basically. So it works against the natives. The system, the government, which is supposed to protect its own people, is working against its own people. I'm talking about the entire system, not talking about any party. So that is an entirely different topic. But I'm talking about the judicial, bureaucratic, and political complex of the Indian system, basically, right? And last then not the least, I should also talk about lack of accountability by certain important institutions. There's a lot of discussion on the internet in general public about political leaders and their lack of accountability, media and its collusion with the political system and and businesses. There's a lot of literature that I don't want to talk about it, but I also want to highlight one important aspect that the Supreme Court kind of unaccountable. The collegium system that they kind of appoint their own judges. It's not very transparent, right? And the kind of judgments they have been giving lately, without adherence to the interpreting without adherence to the constitution. They are just they just views of millards, okay? And they're not really accountable, right? They're not really accountable, and they have been given powers that even no god has on us. So they have powers which no god has on us. That is what I would like to say. They are not accountable, and I would like to see them accountable, like our political leaders. Political leaders at least have to face elections, right? So they at least are a little bit fearful. So we would rather like to be ruled by the people whom we elect, rather than people whom we don't elect, but who are kind of feel entitled that they have to run the country, right? So this is what I would like to say, right? And what do we need to do? I think we need to change the system that does not work for us but against us. Right? Let that sink in. We need to change the system that does not work for us but against us. Right? Is what we need to do. And change cannot happen in a single day. Right? It takes some time. Right? I mean, these people have been at us for the 70 years, and it will take some time. But what can happen is that because we have the internet and the social media right now, we could the information dissemination can happen at a larger pace, and vast swaths of our population can be educated. So I request you to kind of make videos, articles, write articles, blogs, and and share it with the areas of your influence, right? Or circles of your influence, basically, right? So see, I myself have a limited reach. I may reach a few people, few hundred or few thousand if I'm really lucky. But similarly, you could also, if you think that what I am saying is right, and with right honesty and all that, so you could also make instead of just sharing it, keep the sharing of this particular video as a last resort. But if you cannot do anything else, share the video. But I would suggest that you write blogs, you write, you make videos, you make documentaries, and share it, so that this becomes a the mass movement. And finally, what can we do? As one, certainly, non-conformance is one way, and we can see it in the Jellikattu issue. When the people of Tamil Nadu said, no, we do not want to follow the dictate of the Supreme Court, and uh, the system did not have any option but let be, right? So non-conformance is an option. We don't need to conform to be politically correct. We don't need to be conform to something which is harmful for us, right? So this is the thought that we have to kind of think over it, and we can kind of internalize it, that we don't have to be goody good always, right? So with that, I would close this video, and I will till next time, right? So bye, see you.